This is a Leadify podcast.
Welcome to Real Leaders, the podcast that brings leadership lessons to life by analyzing characters from movies and shows that you love. In each episode, we'll explore what their fictional leadership styles can teach us about real-world relationships.
We'll unpack the qualities that make these characters stand out as we evaluate their decisions, strengths, flaws, and how they inspire or sometimes fail the people around them. So whether you're a leader yourself or just a fan of great storytelling, grab your popcorn and join us as we explore the real leaders that have captivated our minds and hearts on screen.
Welcome to today's episode. Today we're talking about The Lion King. This is the 1994 movie from Disney. You can watch the 2019 version, the practically a shot-for-shot recreation. But we're talking about the 1994 animated version. So today we wanted to talk about Scar and Mufasa as leaders. So you had a chance to watch the movie?
I did, yes. And I've also watched it like 100 times, you know?
Well, you're a parent, so yeah.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, I watched it quite a few times myself. And I did watch the new version. It's practically a shot-for-shot recreation. It was actually kind of cool to see it in the updated graphics. But the 1994, just a classic. I like it. And I've seen the musical, so... but we're not talking about the musical version, the Broadway production.
I have seen that one too, though.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Cool. So, Mufasa and Scar. So let's talk about Mufasa first, since he was kind of the original leader of the Pride in the Pride Lands. So what was your kind of first impression, or what did you think of his managerial style or leadership style?
Well, I think Mufasa is definitely a great leader, and the film wants to portray him that way. Although we see Simba later moving into leadership, and I think he'll do things a little bit differently even. But, I think Mufasa generally cares about the collective and is invested in, the whole circle of life. So all of the pieces and parts and remaining sort of harmonious and balanced there.
Yep.
I do sometimes still think that Mufasa has a little bit of a heavy hand when it comes to like a top-down leadership style. But generally, I would say he's looking for the best for everyone in his pride and in the people or animals that occupy his land,
Yeah. Interesting. What do you mean by heavy hand? What did you catch?
I think it's like very authoritative, and sometimes it can be a little extreme, I think. I think we see this in a lot of Disney dads that are still around, like King Triton from The Little Mermaid. Same, in the effort to protect their children, they sometimes just lay down the law without really having a discussion about like why those rules are important. Context, right? Why are they important? Why do we do this? Why does it matter? Why should we listen to these things? Because otherwise you kind of make it like the forbidden and that's just developmentally kids are like, well, yeah, I'm going to try that thing. Yeah, exactly. Right. So sometimes I think like part of what happens in that story is that he kind of lays down the law and makes things forbidden, which to some extent is why Simba goes exploring and pushing the boundaries.
Yeah. But he tried. I mean, there's some lines in there where he's talking about explaining the circle of life and talking about, there's one quote in there, I wrote it down because I like it so much. It's everything you see exists together in a delicate balance. As king, you need to understand that balance and respect all the creatures from the crawling ant to the leaping antelope. Yep. So it's really kind of like everything has got a purpose. That's kind of what I was thinking too with the differences of their leadership styles is he's really understanding the balance. Every, animal has a part. Everyone under his leadership has a role and they're important, and understanding why they're important. But I think he was trying to explain that. And, Simba's a young kid, he's not quite there yet. Of course, it's a lesson he learns eventually, right?
Right. Yeah, and I think that circle of life and Mufasa having his eye on the delicate balance of the ecosystem is certainly like one of his strengths, right? We see that the land is flourishing under him. I think when I talk about his sort of authoritative rule, it's more about like, we don't leave this boundary. And I don't think he often does enough to explain that to Simba, but also we know that like sometimes you have to learn by experience, right? So even if he had, I think Simba probably would have gone on that adventure anyway.
Yeah. Yeah. And actually for me too, like when I was watching that part where he says, can we go to the shadow area? He's like, don't go there. But when you kind of see the interaction between Mufasa and the hyenas, it was, they knew who each other was. He knew what was down there. They had some kind of agreement or truce or something, I don't know, going on of like, you stay on your side, we'll stay on our side, but they don't really get into a lot of that.
Right.
Yeah. Was there any blind spots that you thought you had besides just like not kind of really going into some of the details on?
I mean, the only other thing that I might say is a critique of Mufasa's leadership. And to what extent it's a critique, I don't know, because we don't see the whole backstory. I think there is a movie coming out, Scar, right, soon. And there's probably going to be some manufactured backstory there that will account for some of these things. But one of the things that I do wonder is like, there is this beautiful circle of life if you stay within this boundary. But outside of this boundary, we see that there are individuals on the fringe who aren't a part of that. And maybe it's because they've opted out, or maybe it's because they've been cast out. But I do wonder, is there something that Mufasa could have done to broker some kind of peace? And maybe he has. Maybe that's what we see. The pieces that they just don't interact. Right. But a part of me wonders, like, is there another way to create belonging or inclusion, right? With the hyenas?
Yeah.
But I don't know. I mean, maybe not.
Yeah. Oh, I thought the same thing. And we'll get to that in a little bit when we talk about Scar and how I think he kind of saw an untapped opportunity in the hyenas. But back to Mufasa, one of the things that I was thinking was, well, there's the kind of the obvious contingency planning.
For sure.
Is a disaster relief, like what happens, so I'm just thinking, what is that? What could he have done better, besides just, well, when I die, Simba will take over. But that's going to be a long time from now. There's no kind of like interim what happens if. So I think that was maybe something that could have been handled a little bit better so it doesn't kind of create that animosity or angst.
Exactly.
Something unexpected happens. The other thing I thought was a blind spot for him was actually his relationship with Scar.
Mm-hmm.
There was a couple of lines in there where Zazu is, trusted assistant or advisor, pretty much told him that you should have gotten rid of him a long time ago. He's like, well, but no, it's my brother. So I think he should have seen the obvious signs and listened to the people around him and said, you know what, this is not good for balance. This is not healthy. This is something he should have addressed a while ago.
Yeah, for sure. But I mean, it puts Mufasa in a really weird position or like difficult position. And I know they're animals. So like animals kill animals all the time. But, it's clearly a Disney movie. So it's like, well, this person is an outlier and he doesn't do what we like. So we're just going to like get rid of him. I don't know. It's a hard one to, how do you deal with that,
Mm-hmm. Sure. But as far as like in the delicate balance that he's talking about, I'm not sure I saw where Scar fit in all that.
Yeah.
He wasn't really providing a lot. His only role in there seemed to be being his brother.
Yes.
So nepotism, I guess, but.
Yeah. For sure.
So for Scar, if we switch over to Scar, what did you think about him taking over?
He's just in it for himself, right? Entirely self-serving. He is not interested in the circle of life. He's not interested in what he can bring or how he can lead. I mean, he's just interested in like, what can I acquire for myself? And we see that clearly when, the Pride Lands are ultimately sort of decimated by his time and power, right? Because he hasn't paid attention to that ecosystem and the delicate balance, and it's just all been sort of ravaged and razed. Right. And I think it's a good indication of the kinds of things that can happen in an organization when you have a leader who isn't really tapped into or aligned with the greater good and caring for all of the pieces of their ecosystem and only think about profit or profit margins or their own success or whatever, what have you, right?
Yeah. So, yeah, he's smart, obviously.
Oh, absolutely smart.
Very cunning, had drive and vision. And one thing I noticed was it seems like he really crafted it alone. Like he was pretty much doing it all for me. Like he didn't really check in with advisors or anything like that. He didn't check in with the other lionesses about, when he kind of stepped in on day one and made sweeping changes. Now we're bringing in hyenas, and his real whole purpose seemed to be being in charge.
Yes.
It was ruling. It wasn't leading.
Right. Absolutely.
So that was one thing. I was like, if we were going to try and make Scar better, what advice would I give him? Or how could he have done this a little bit differently? How could he actually been successful taking over? Nefarious things aside, it's the movie. But, I was thinking, what if on day one, instead of just making the sweeping changes, if he had actually sat down or, talked with the existing well-working ecosystem, and said, found out what's working well, keep the things that are working well, and not just go straight into, we're doing things different, we're doing things my way.
Right. But I think that requires, before you get to the point where you have the insight or foresight or whatever it is to sit down and have that discussion, you first have to have the desire to work not just for yourself. So, right, that's kind of servant leadership part, which we talk about at Blanchard sometimes, but you have to have that desire to see other people succeed in an ecosystem. And before we could even get there, I wonder, how do we change Scar's mindset or his heart even to demonstrate that ultimately this path, which he thinks is going to lead at least for success for himself, is ultimately going to lead to everyone's decay and decline, right? Even at the end of this, Scar is not successful. They're out of food, right? They don't have food. They don't have resources because he's depleted them all. And so how do we change his mindset to show him that being out for oneself ultimately will fail?
Yeah. If you look kind of at the makeup, again, we're only given a very brief view of the kingdom, but the personnel didn't change all that much, except for two lions. Mufasa and Simba were no longer around. Everything else was pretty much the same, except for how he managed the hunting grounds and bringing the hyenas in, and they were hunting too much, and then just seeing how that balance was destroyed. And he could have addressed that a little bit sooner.
Yeah. Well, and the idealist in me, so here's the thing, and I am curious to see what they'll do with that movie, Scar, because obviously they almost always give these villains a backstory that indicates how they became villains, or what prompted their moves toward whatever, right?
Right.
Now, I suppose some people might just inherently be sort of, I don't know, they are lean one way or another. But my question really is, if we go back and we hear some echoes of it in the things that Scar says about feeling basically like a second-class citizen, I do wonder, something happened, or at least, he didn't feel like he was given his proper time, attention, whatever it might be. And I do think this happens, right? That when people learn that collaboration doesn't get them anywhere, in a certain way, then they turn to being sort of isolated in their efforts. Right. And so, that would be something to think about. I'd want to sit Scar down and be like, hey, buddy, what happened? Let's talk about this.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And it's everything you just mentioned, it really kind of came out into this where, he didn't when things started going south, it wasn't, we didn't see the full transition because, we were focused on Simba, but there's at some point where he had to have noticed that there was some struggles happening, and he didn't really check in or seem to really change course when things started going south. And he really seemed to kind of reward the loyalists or the people, who were holding him up, instead of actually rewarding anyone who could disagree with him.
Yeah. And I think that this is true, right? He does seem to value loyalty, at least to a certain extent, as long as it serves him.
Right.
But again, in the end, when there's not enough resources, he's going to hoard them first. So he's very much operating in a kind of scarcity mindset too. There's only enough for a certain amount of animals here. It kind of becomes greedy on his part.
Yeah. And the other thing too is it kind of created a lot of resentment with the other lionesses, where they were working, they kept saying this is not going well, and and so when Simba came back, he didn't have anyone sticking up for him, saying, well, Scar's done a great job. No one said that.
Yeah, I don't think he had anyone.
Let's give him a chance. Hang on, Didn't happen.
Nope. No, he definitely didn't have anyone on his side except for the hyenas, who were essentially riding his coattails and relied on him to keep things,
and inflict on them too.
Well, of course, right? Because at the end, when there's no more resources, he's gonna vie for those things and not make any space for them. So it really is like a losing strategy all around to work and to function in that way. But I think we see it often in organizations where people become sort of short-sighted for a variety of reasons, and it typically doesn't end well, for the organization, for teams, for leaders. Like, it's just not a good way to be with people in a space like that.
Yeah. And I've also seen or experienced people who are like, if I was in charge, it's how I would do things. And you're like, well, it's more about more than just being in charge. It's actually lifting people up and serving your people. It's not just about having the power, which is what I think we kind of saw here.
Yeah. And I think like what Mufasa does actually in, sort of opposition to Scar is that he does create, and Simba does the same thing. He creates loyalty in his followers because of his behaviors and actions and not because of a transaction. Like, Scar's loyalty is it's transactional. It's like, if you do this for me, then I'll do this for you. And as long as we continue this transactional relationship, then everything's good. But with Mufasa and then later with Simba, I think it's more of they have demonstrated their care for the people around them. And so they receive care in the package of loyalty, right? It's like, this is mutual care. This is what this looks like when we care for one another.
I like that. One thought I had while watching the movie too was, and this kind of comes back to Scar just wanting to be in charge, the whole song that Simba sang, the "Just Can't Wait to Be King," that could have easily have been Scar's song.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Everything about it. I just can't wait to be king. No one says do this. No one says do that. Could have been Scar's song.
Absolutely. In a way less fun and jaunty way, though. It would have been like dark and terrifying.
Yeah, exactly. So one thing I wanted to ask you too, essential motivators.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think, in just quick recap, do you want to maybe give a quick recap of the different essential motivators we have?
Yeah, so we've got fire, earth, air, and water. And fire typically wants the freedom to act. These are just really brief overviews. Earth typically needs to have sort of order and order the chaos. Water depends a lot on the connection that they have with others. And then air is typically sort of the thinker of the bunch, the strategist of the bunch. Like, they really like to have the big picture before they make any decisions.
Yeah. So how did you peg the Scar and Mufasa as far as their essential motivators?
Oh, man. I mean, Scar is absolutely a fire.
Yep.
He wants the freedom to act. He can be impulsive sometimes. He's good under pressure. He can come up with a solution to something on the fly like no one's business. He's a great sort of quick thinker in that way. So I would say
doesn't really want to get in the details too much either.
No, he doesn't really care how it works out. He's just like, this is a plan and we're going to do this. And so let's take this action right now. Right. He's definitely a fire, I would say.
And just, to say not, fire doesn't equal villain. It's just, we're talking about basic characteristics.
Wasn't it though? No, I'm kidding. Fire doesn't equal villain.
We'll have to kind of keep a track of this. Like, how many villains are, in each category and how many protagonists are,
Oh my gosh, that would be funny.
What about Mufasa? I had him as an earth.
Interesting. Yeah, I can see that. I think that he's very much attuned to the details in that way. So I could absolutely see him being an earth. I could also see him being an air to some extent. He tends to philosophize a lot, like he kind of talks in philosophical terms. He's really interested in demonstrating the big picture. So I could see him as an air as well, I would say.
Yeah. I mostly put him in the earth just because of the core needs for an earth, just being responsibility and duty, worship and belonging, loyalty, family, friends. It's like that kind of really speaks earth to me.
Absolutely. That makes a lot of sense to me. I could go with that for sure.
So I also did make notes on who I thought would be an excellent water. So I'll put Rafiki.
Oh, yes. I love that. Yeah. I mean, that's his whole gig, right? He's like connecting people to one another, to themselves, to the earth, to all of that.
Their motto being, be true to yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Remember who you are.
Oh, I love that. Yeah. Rafiki is a great water.
Yeah. And for air, I actually had Zazu.
It's so funny because he stuck a little. You're right, though. He's a total logician. Funny. I like that.
Yeah. Well, we're about at time, but just one quick note. So the opening line, have you ever looked into those lyrics?
Oh, I have. I did because I wanted to know what they said, but it was a long time ago.
Yeah. So I looked it up because I thought it was funny, but I'm gonna butcher the pronunciation, but I'm gonna try. Nans Ngonyama by Githi Baba, which literally translates to "Here comes the lion, father."
Oh.
However, I did look up some more information on it, and it really comes down to language and context. And so I think it actually means I present to you the king.
Okay.
It's kind of put into full context.
Mm-hmm.
But I just thought that was always interesting.
Oh, yeah. That's cool. I like that.
I actually had this other quote that we probably should have started with, but I'm going to play it. Okay. It's a quote from Zazu, and when he's talking to Scar.
Yes, sire, you are the king. I only mentioned it to illustrate the differences in your royal managerial approaches.
Oh my gosh, I wouldn't have caught that. Well, that's it for today. Thanks for joining us on the episode of Real Leaders. We hope you enjoyed exploring leadership lessons through the lens of our characters today. If you liked what you heard, don't forget to subscribe, share, and drop us a review. It really helps.
Do you have a movie or character you'd like to discuss? Leave us a comment or connect with us on Instagram at Real Leaders, that's REEL Leaders, and join the conversation. Until then, keep looking for leadership lessons in the stories you love, and we'll catch you in the next episode.